If you're someone who's ever opened Roblox Studio, you're likely well familiar with these services here in the Explorer. So they're called services. So workspace, players, lighting, all this stuff. This is a service. And the goal of this tutorial for me is to fully explain everything to you because honestly, there are some, and including myself, there are some scripters who've been scripting for like years and who don't quite understand what material service is or network client, for example. So I'll start off from the top and work my way down to the bottom. Workspace is basically anything that should be seen. So for example, I have a couple pets here, golden model. So if I click this, these pets are in the workspace, and so we can actually see them in the game. If I were to take all of these and delete them, well, we wouldn't see them. If I were to take all of these and move them in server storage or replicated storage, for example, I would not see them, which I'll do right now. I mean, or I could just copy them in here. Yeah, they are not here. So let's just undo that. So yeah, workspace is basically for everything that should be visible in game. Now, unless something just cannot be visible, like you can't really see a camera, or if I had a sound or a script in the workspace, for example, that's not something you can see. So obviously you're not going to see it. But as for, parts, mesh parts, anything that should have a model, and you need like the player to actually see it, you should put inside of workspace. Players is basically just it has a list of every single player who's currently playing your game. Very simple. Each player has a backpack, has some scripts, and has, I believe, like player GUI, as well as any values you may add to the player upon joining the game. Lighting basically just contains every like lighting thing in the game. So we have blur effect, so I can just add this, and there we go. Now we're blurred. I can change this, the size, I can make it enabled or disabled. Lighting itself has some properties like the clock time. So for example, if you have like a skybox that's supposed to like move around, so it's like day and then it's night and so on. I believe clock time is what determines the speed of the skybox change. Yeah, time of day, the position, oh yeah, the sun position, the latitude of the skybox, and then you can add like shadows, global shadows, brightness, ambient, so on. So you can like experiment with these. But the whole point is that anything that kind of changes the way your game is viewed, be that like in terms of a color correction, blur, bloom, sun rays, anything like that, then you should be using lighting. Now, material service isn't really used, as in you don't really put anything inside. Material service is more of something you would call like in a script. So you would say game dot material service dot, and then you'd like change something. The idea here is that material service contains every single material that like the terrain uses, right? So if you have any materials imported into the game, let's say you want to have a custom snow material, so you don't like the way that the Roblox snow looks. If you have your custom material, you would just click here and you would select your custom material. If I were to click none, well then the snow would literally just not exist. I wouldn't like the snow just would be invisible. So I probably don't want that, so I'll keep it snow for now. But yeah, material service is just all about the default materials that come with Roblox. Network client is an interesting one because it's also not one that you like put things into. It has a client replicator and network client. The only real purpose that this has is to tell the game whether a client is connected to the server or not connected. And I believe there are like events for this as well. So you can look this up, like Roblox network client events. And I believe there's one that tells you if the client has successfully connected, and then you can like do something after the client has connected, or if a client has failed, like failed connection, so they're not connected to the server, so they're not up to date with the game. What do we do then? So if your game has issues with clients disconnecting or whatever, network client should be what you use to fix that. Now, replicated storage and replicated first are very similar. Replicated storage, very similar to server storage, is you could think of it as like a place where you can just store effectively anything, and they will not have an impact on the actual game. So for example, if I were to take these pets in the workspace and move them to replicated storage, they would be inside replicated storage. They would not be seen in the game. They would not be like far away from the camera or whatever. They would just be in a different storage. You can think of it as bubbles. So like workspace is a big bubble, and then like on the corner there's like a smaller bubble with stuff inside replicated storage. And so what replicated storage does is it allows both the server and the client to actually view what's inside of it. So it replicates whatever's inside of it to every player who's playing the game. So let's say like the player's client would know everything that's inside here. So this is used for stuff like remote events, remote functions, and sometimes like GUI models, basically anything that both the server and the client may need. Replicated first is exactly the same, except this just gets replicated to the client before anything in replicated storage. So maybe you want to add like a thing where it's like a screen and it's like it says loading or whatever. So you would add this to be replicated first and then everything else later. Server script service and server storage. Server script service is just where you put all of your server scripts. The clients cannot access any of these. So like for example, if I were to make a local script, it literally doesn't even know that these two exist. It doesn't know that server storage or server script service are a thing. These are for server side only. So for example, if you want to have a server script that contains like a password to like a door in your level, if you were to put this script inside of Workspace, then it would be replicated to the client, and then anyone using like some like hack like cheating software is able to read this script and be like, okay, so that's the password, and then they'll use it and then they'll win. That's a very harmless example, by the way. So many people read the script and then figure out how to actually cheat in the game. So in order to avoid doing that, make sure to put all of your server scripts, if possible, inside server script service. And server storage is exactly like replicated storage in the sense that, it makes its own like little bubble, puts stuff inside of it. But the exception is that, again, the client cannot access this. So if you have anything here that you don't want, the client or local script to access, then put it in server storage. Starter GUI is basically just where you make your GUI. So you would, make like a screen GUI and then add, frames, buttons, anything. What Starter GUI does is that whenever a player joins, it takes all the GUI inside and puts it inside the player GUI. So normally when players join, they have like a thing called player GUI. It's like a folder. I don't know why this isn't here. I believe it only shows up when you're actually playing the game. But yeah, it just takes whatever GUI is here and then clones it to the player. This is also why, by the way, if you want to change a player's GUI, don't go to like game.starter.gui.frames.color equal red. You have to actually change the player GUI, because changing the starter GUI does nothing. I mean, it's already like replicated to the player. So the player has the clone. If you change the starter GUI, the player will still have the old copy. So nothing will happen. So if you want to change the player GUI, make sure to actually do game dot players dot local player dot player GUI and then whatever GUI you had in the starter GUI. It's a little confusing, but just make GUI here, make a screen GUI and like add a text button, and then play the game, open up the player GUI, and then just see like how it kind of copies the GUI to your player. Starter pack is the same, but it's just for tools, literally the same. Just whatever tool you have in here just gives to the player. Starter player has starter character script and starter player script. Whenever a player joins, these are the scripts that'll be ran. Whenever the player's character is loaded, these are the scripts that will be ran. And character, it says in like, if you reset your character, then the scripts will run again. So if your character dies and gets reloaded, scripts are going to run again. Teams, you know how like sometimes in the like the list that shows you all the player names, and you have like teams sometimes like in those stupid tycoon games, it's like red, blue, or like Spider-Man, Batman. That's how they make the teams. So you put in here, you add a new team, you give it a name, you give it like a color, and then you can just assign players to be part of this team using the team service. Sound service, usually people put sounds in here, if you couldn't tell. You could do like, reverb, distance, Doppler. You can pause to read this, but Doppler is effectively like when an ambulance passes by. Doesn't it sound like it's like alarm sound almost gets like low pitch? That's what Doppler is. And oh yeah, it's basically saying it right here. And this is like just the scale at which it does that. Roll off scale, volumetric audio. So I'm not too sure what this is. I don't know what is volumetric audio? Let's be honest. Like if I don't know what it is, probably useless. The thing you should know about sound service is that if you put a sound inside of here, a server script cannot like play the sounds that are inside sound service. Server scripts can only play sounds if they're inside the workspace. So if you have a sound that like needs to be played by server scripts, then put it inside workspace. But if not, then it's just good to keep everything organized. And text chat service here, this is where you customize like how the chat window looks. So how the bubble chat looks, the chat window, the chat input bar. You can change like the font face, style, colors, size, all of that. And yeah, that's basically it. Now there are that like basically honestly like 1,000 more other services that you can go to Google, look up like all Roblox services, but these are the main ones which Roblox was like, you know what, these are the ones that are important, so we're going to be showing this one. So whenever you're watching like your like 10th tutorial of the day about Roblox, and they mention a service or they do game get service and then they like put in some service, what they're really talking about is things like these. It's just that these services are more important, so we see them in the Explorer window. And then something like, I don't know, user input service would not be here because we really don't need it to be here. And yeah, that's basically it. If you have any questions about this, feel free to leave a comment. I'll be sure to respond. And again, questions about these things. So don't go asking me about like, hey man, how do you use teleport service? How do you use skibbity toilet service? Like I don't know. Like I had to look up what network client service was. Like that's how useless this thing is. But I guess it's here. I guess we need it. All right, bro. Thanks for watching.